In this video, we're going to go through my top plugin recommendations, and all of them are free. The first is Air Windows Consolidated. So this is one single plugin which essentially embodies the entire life work of Chris from Air Windows. There's literally hundreds of plugins in here. If you look at distortion, there's more than 10 distortion plugins. There's maybe 20 dynamics plugins. There's loads of effects and all the filters you want. And you've got like weird stuff like, you've got like Kalman filters and all sorts of weird stuff which you don't really see anywhere else. This is absolutely great. There's a whole bunch of reverb plugins in here, a whole bunch of saturation and desk modeling plugins and tape modeling plugins and all sorts of stuff here. This is so much, I just can't even begin to go through it in this video. This is everything you need pretty much. The reason why not everyone is using these plugins is because none of them have interfaces. That's his whole vibe. He makes plugins without interfaces. He doesn't care about the pretty interfaces. He just cares about the sound. But that means that most people don't use them because they want pretty interfaces. Well, you're missing out because he makes some absolutely fantastic plugins. The second on my list is VCV Rack 2 Free. Now this isn't strictly speaking a plugin, it's a standalone application in the free version, but this is a virtual Eurorack modular synth platform where you can have literally thousands of completely free modules, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you want to get any synth sounds, if you want to compose some music and not just process audio but actually create audio, well, this is absolutely mind-blowing, and even more so that it's absolutely free for the free version. So the first two on my list were absolute powerhouses with endless possibilities to process and create sound. But let's get into some more standard plugins now. So let's talk about my favorite standard EQ plugin, which is 100% free, and that would be Nova. Now some people don't like the interface that much, but I think it's just fine, and it's an extremely competent EQ. It's got an output gain, it's got EQ gain matching, which is very, very good, especially if you're less experienced. You can really hear what the EQ is doing to your sound with this button enabled. Next up, my favorite dynamic EQ plugin is a plugin called Nova, available at the Tokyo Dawn website. So the second you click this button here, the band turns into a dynamic EQ, and it's an exceptionally high quality, very accurate dynamic EQ, which I use all of the time professionally as a mastering engineer. And unlike FabFilter Pro Q3, it's actually got attack and release time constants right there. So it's incredibly accurate. You can get exactly the sound you need, and you can use it at a professional mastering level. It's absolutely fantastic, and the fact that it's free is just ridiculous. Now, my favorite filter plugin to get really clean low pass and high pass filters, or really dirty low pass and high pass filters and do automation sweeps and really cool stuff, is a plugin called Nova. Now, when we're working with vocals, we really need a good de-esser. That is absolutely essential. And my favorite de-esser plugin is a plugin called Nova. Breaking boundaries. Sometimes it can be really important to process the stereo image. Whether we're doing sound design, mixing or mastering, we might need independent control over the left or right channels in terms of EQ, or we might need mid-side control in terms of EQ, or overall balancing of the mid or side channels. And my favorite plugin to do this is a plugin called Nova. Now, when we're working with drums or other percussive elements and we want to control the transients, or maybe we're working with vocals or bass guitars and we want to limit the transients, then we might need some sort of transient shaping tool. Now, my favorite plugin for processing transients is called Nova. And of course, no list of plugins would be complete without mentioning compressors. Now, one of my favorite compressors is a plugin called Nova. If you didn't know you could do those things with Nova, or many people don't know that you can do those things with Nova, and that's why my channel really focuses on the education side of how to use the plugins which you already have available to you, because you can pretty much do everything you need to do with just a few plugins, but only if you know how to use them the right way. Otherwise, you just suffer from gear acquisition syndrome and go out and keep buying more and more plugins because you think you're going to get more flavors and more possibilities so that you can be more creative and do better things faster and easier in the mix. Or actually, the way that you get creative and do better things faster and easier in the mix is by knowing how to use the plugins you already have available to you, and the ones which are just freely available online, like Nova, like the ones that I'm saying in this video. Now that's why I put together my EQ course, to teach exactly how to use these interesting techniques with free plugins, with the plugins you already have. So if you haven't done already, check out my courses on my website. I've got one there on EQ where I use Nova and I show you all of these dynamic tricks with Nova, and I've got one specifically on kick drums which is aimed at electronic producers. So if you've got gas, my courses might be your remedy. One of my favorite dedicated compressor plugins is called Molot, and it's made by the same guy who makes Nova. He published this plugin completely free to his WordPress website, but now you can get it as a legacy download on the TDR website. However, you might have some issues trying to install it because it's so old now, but you can just enable it in the system preferences, and I got it to install on my Mac, which is running the latest operating system for Mac OS. Alternatively, there's a new recreation of that plugin available at the Tokyo Dawn website as well. Now, gate plugins are absolutely essential for mixing. Now, following the pattern that I established already, you can do gating in Nova, believe it or not. But it's probably not the best gate to actually use. My personal favorite gate is only available in Reaper. It's by Toucan Studios. It's called Purple Gate. That's an absolutely incredible gate because I really like the exponential release period of the gate. It just sounds really natural and really nice. And it's definitely the best free gate which I've encountered, but it's only available for Reaper. The best limiter is really difficult to say because most of the limiters on the market, including really expensive paid limiters, can sound really bad. I don't like many of the offerings on the market, especially not the free ones. So the only limiter which I've found which isn't horrible in the free category is limiter number 6 by the same guy who made Nova and the Molot compressor plugin. This guy is an absolute genius. And again, this was free, published to his WordPress website many years ago, and you can still get it, but it's pretty much the best free limiter I've ever heard, if you know how to use it. That's a massive caveat, because it can absolutely destroy your track if you don't know how to use it correctly. It's got very powerful settings, which you need to know how to use in a proper way, otherwise you're just going to do more damage than good, and it's probably better just to not use a limiter in that case. But if you know how to use it in the proper way, with very gentle settings, it's an absolutely amazing limiter. Now, unlike limiter plugins, there's many free reverb plugins out there, many of which sound absolutely fantastic. One of my personal favorites is the Tau reverb plugin. You can get really nice synthetic reverb tones, a bit like the Lexicon 480L from back in the day. And it's a really lush sounding plugin, and I really like using them for creative purposes. If you like free plugins, consider checking out my previous video on EQ plugins, where I demonstrate that many of these paid EQ plugins are basically just a gimmick. You can achieve the same results just by using one full-featured EQ plugin like TDR Nova.